Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Spinal Workshop. We're going to talk about a pretty hot topic in Ohio over the last few weeks. So before we jump into it, make sure, like if you learned something, subscribe to the channel. That way you never miss a video. You can also hit that notification bell, whenever we go and post up. So this week's topic, we're talking about something that is essential to life, something that we need every single day. And honestly, we feel better with it. We're talking about the sun this week. I know that with the eclipse going on, it's been that widely discussed topic, but really we're getting into the sun and sunscreen, sunburns. I know it's warming up here in Ohio, but before we get into this, before we get into summer, before we get into all those warmer temperatures, getting out in the sun and enjoying it, what's really going on with the sun, sunscreens, sun protectives, all of those different things? Well, it turns out our sunscreens may not be as effective as we originally thought, and that's what I want to dive into this week. So, first off, let's talk about the sun, the fiery ball in the sky that gives us life. Well, 93 million miles away. And that light has to travel all of that distance, go through atmosphere and everything going on with our ozone layer and everything to get all the way to our body and hit our skin. And that's where fun things happen. But society is typically viewed as the sun is a bad thing. We wouldn't exist without that sun. So, when people always talk about dangers within the sun, they're not talking about the sunlight itself. What they're doing is they talk about the UV rays that are associated within sunlight. So let's dive into it. UV rays, sunlight that causes the skin damage. And that's always what we want to protect ourselves from. Skin damage. We don't want to get skin cancer. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But there's also a lot of positive proponents of UV light that we also need to get the whole picture of this. So UV light actually kills viruses. In fact, UV light is the most powerful way to kill viruses. It's a way that protects ourselves. It helps with how we sleep. If you're not sleeping at night, one of the components that may help out with that is actually sunlight. Our brain needs to understand that it is daytime. And because we're not nocturnal creatures, or at least most of us, we know when that UV light and sunlight is gone, that it's time to go to sleep. Different chemicals that allow us to shut down and get a night full of rest. The big thing that we always talk about with the sunlight, why UV light is so important, is it actually helps us activate vitamin D. So why is vitamin D important? It helps so much with the immune system. But what I really want to do is draw importance to that UV light that most people are a little gun shy of. We're a little scared of. It actually has a lot of positive. Let's break this down from our skin level and into the cells themselves. So we have a type of cell within our skin called melanocytes. Melanocytes help produce melanin, based on how you want to pronounce it. Is that melanin is what produces color within our skin. Darker skinned people, more melanin. Lighter or fairer skinned people, less melanin. So what that melanin is it actually acts as a protector. So we think about this for a second. When you sit in the sun, your skin gets a little bit darker. Why? It's response to, I'm getting more sun to skin exposure. I need to help protect myself from those harmful rays within the sun. It acts as a guard within that. So, melanin is also used as protective. It actually can produce some energy from UV light. And typically when you think of energy produced from the sun, you're thinking like a plant. In the same way, but there are some proteins that are produced from our body when we go sit in the sun. We have that exposure. Our body actually produces a type of protein that we can use for energy. But let's stick with this concept of the melanin. Having less naturally produced melanin creates that lighter skin. It does have a predisposition to an increased risk of skin damage. Now, I know that what it does is it helps protect the skin. So if you are producing less melanin, you have less things protection against that skin, against those UV. The skin and actually causes some damage with that. So UV light causes damage to the skin, and less melanin to protect the skin and absorb from UV light means there is damage. So here's where the conversation shifts. So UV light does cause a fair amount of damage, but in all cases, is that a bad thing? Bad things, but there's also a component of restorative mechanisms at play here. So when you have damage to your skin, and this is damage, when you have damage, you're going to create an immune response. You're going to cause inflammation. There's going to be potentially. Now we think about this if we sprain an ankle. Sprain an ankle, we damage some of the ligaments within that ankle, it's going to swell. You may have that inflammation. It's going to get maybe a little bit puffy. You may have some redness, some soreness, some pain. And relate it back to the skin. Redness, painful, maybe a little bit of inflammation to it. So what a sunburn actually is an immune response to some damage to the skin. But now I want to put a big pause moment on this, and why I say that thing that you should be scared of. What happens with any immune response, especially when there's damage or an injury to our bodies in some capacity? The immune system sends the response. It senses out, destroys those damaged cells, and replaces them with new healthy cells that are stronger than the ones that were damaged, wounded, however you want to say it. Here's the problem. We typically think of damaged skin and we think immediately skin cancer. The sun and UV light is cancer. That's a common misconception that people like to think of. We like to be scared of the sun because the sun causes skin cancer. The fault in the immune response ineffectively, like our body's supposed to, if we're unable to replace those damaged cells, and now all of a sudden those damaged cells start to replicate at a faster rate than what they can be replaced at, and we can't keep those, that is when cancer starts. So it's actually the immune response and not sufficiently cleaning exposure itself. So let's kind of shift gears. I know I love stats. I love keeping track of trends and how our society is working. National Cancer Institute say that all cancer has quadrupled since 1975. From 1972 to 2004, melanoma, which is the typical skin cancer that usually causes more problems, that's more lethal in that regard, has tripled in men and almost tripled in women. The clinic says rates in melanoma went up 8% amongst eight times more prevalent in young women and 4 times more prevalent in young men. During that same time, the amount of sunscreen that has been purchased and applied has had a meteoric rise between. So, let's think about this for a second. If we're using more sunscreen, but rates of malignant melanoma have skyrocketed, how effective is the sunscreen? This is a paradox that we're working with. The sunscreen is supposed to protect ourselves from preventing skin cancer, and yet increased sunscreen usage is not decreasing melanoma rates. So what they're saying is either the sunscreen is ineffective or being used completely improperly. Apply every 2 hours and they're applying it every 2.5 hours. That's the claim that they're going to use. So sunscreen, again, isn't all bad. It does cause some damage, but it also has a lot of beneficial properties to us. But if you're blocking out all of the sun components and trying to protect an extra layer of skin with the sunscreen, have negative effects as it inhibits our body's ability to produce vitamin D, as well as blocking out some of that UV light that. Why is that important? We always talk about vitamin D is so important, especially here in the Midwest, because we do not get in the sun for 4 or 5 months out of the year. We're not getting that same sort of sun-to-skin exposure to the prevalence of diseases. So, vitamin D is crucial towards what we need to function. So, one of the things that is relating to a lot of this sunburn, which is a lot of that damage and a lot of that inflammatory response to sun, where our body would normally be able to handle it just fine without a sunburn, but you may be quicker to sunburn, is actually antibiotics. So research found in antibiotics is photosensitivity. Photon, used as a form of light sensitivity. So more sensitive to light when dealing. What that is the bacteria in our gut actually helps create skin cells. Antibiotics helps kill bacteria. So when we kill a lot of the good gut flora, worse skin cells that are not as able to protect against the sun. Again, a little bit of damage is in there. Our body's supposed to be able to handle that. We've been doing that for centuries upon centuries before sunscreen was involved, and we didn't cancer except over the last really 40 years here. So when that bacteria in our gut gets damaged, we actually create worse cells. How frequently or how intensely we have a sunburn is actually NSAIDs, which I know we talk about NSAIDs a lot here with our spinal workshops. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory inflammation. If you think back to what we started about earlier here in the conversation, the immune response is in all of the damaged cells. When those damaged cells are not cleaned up and replaced with healthy, young, new cells, and they're not kept in check, and then that cancer is when those cells are not kept in check. But the immune system is supposed to take care of that and monitor. But now what we do is we suppress the immune system because everyone's taking NSAIDs, everyone's in pain. We're actually harming ourselves and making it harder to be. Dr. Helms what do we do? What do we do? Well, I'm not saying be scared of the sun, but there's actually some foods that can actually help you skin exposure. One of those things, drinking coffee. Now, what I did not say is run on down to Starbucks and have all of the sugar in coffee. Actually does help that skin tolerance. One of the other things, and I'm going to make some friends with this one, but don't worry, I'll come back and get you here and stuff. Chocolate is very rich in flavonoids. And so when they studied people drinking hot chocolate with a high concentration of flavonoids and a low concentration of flavonoids, specifically they like dark chocolate a little bit more, but those flavonoids are typically what is viewed as what helps out with the skin there. You can also apples, berries, cherries. There are better options than maybe getting that Hershey's bar, but there are some benefits absolutely with chocolate. Quite a bit with helping out the skin. A lot of those nutritional values that are within a tomato actually helps protect against UV rays. Same thing they found was with watermelon. Eating a lot in the summer, that actually can help out with keeping the skin in good conditions where it can handle the sun. So, the sun, no. Should we do everything with moderation? Of course. But it's one of those things where we have an over us that we need to be scared of the sun. So I went to a place that I always find somewhat dangerous in terms of a website. I wanted to see what they had to say. WebMD gave me benefits of sunlight. Vitamin D, which we talked about. Better sleep, which we talked about. You can actually get some weight loss. On a workshop topic with the morning sun there as well. Emotional support. You feel better in the sun. When there's cloudy and gloomy and you don't get that sunlight, you just kind of feel more down in the dumps. It's a nice day. We get excited. We feel better. There's a mental and emotional component that helps out quite a bit when we have that sunlight. Eye health. They look at the sun. But those UV rays just in natural sunlight with us looking around, being out in the sun and seeing sunlight instead of covering them up with vision issues. Skin health. So I thought skin was bad. We were scared. Our skin shouldn't be in the sun. It's bad for it. Improve with sunlight, specifically talking about eczema and psoriasis. Those conditions can ease a little bit. One of the things that you may know this is UV light is actually used a little bit with jaundice. Bilirubin that builds up where babies get born and they're a little bit more yellow. Some of that bilirubin. There's actually some benefits with the sunlight within moderation, of course, that actually helps out with helping with jaundice. So, to wrap it all up, we need the sun to survive. The sun is essential to life. It's one of the things that gives us life. Society, we typically shy away from it. It makes us nervous, makes us scared. We're told to protect ourselves from the dangerous fireball in the sky. But there are a lot of health benefits that can actually help you out by being in that sun. Get that sun to skin exposure. That is beneficial. Makes you think. Ask questions. Provoke questions with that. Like I said, I hope you learned something. Hope you definitely help you live a happier, healthier life and live the best, most informed decisions that give you the best life possible. So, make sure share it with a friend, and we look forward to seeing you at our next spinal workshop.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed that Spinal workshop. Don't forget to like the video if you learned something, and be sure to share it with somebody else who may benefit from that information discussed. Also, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you are alerted whenever we post a video.